Good morning, YouTube. We are going to be transforming this leftover log into something absolutely beautiful. So what we're going to do in this project today is we're going to take this scrap piece of firewood and we're going to try to transform it into a bowl without using epoxy. So if you've been watching my channel for a little bit, the past couple of weeks we've been taking scrap pieces of firewood, tearing them down, and creating cool epoxy bowls with them. But I decided just to do a plain Jane regular bowl with just this leftover log. So what I ended up doing was cleaning it up a little bit, sanded it down, try to get some of that dead bark off of it, and I'm going to attempt to put this faceplate on there. So I haven't done anything like this before, so decided to just wing it for the most part. So I'm going to put the faceplate on there. I'm using deck screws and my impact driver to get all of that attached nice and neat. Going to throw that onto the lathe. And I'm really glad I used the deck screws because we are about to watch a lot of wobble. So I didn't think this was a particular large piece of wood, but it was oblong and misshapen, so I knew there was going to be a lot of shaking on the lathe. So tried to secure everything down the best I could, give it a nice spin, braced my leg up against the lathe, turned the thing on, and you can just see the amount of wobble that is already occurring as I'm just attempting to start to take off piece by piece small little portions of this leftover log. So here we are, sped up, and surprisingly I knew enough to where I needed to get the bottom made first. So just like with most projects, starting on the bottom, trying to get all the material worked down to where it's nice enough to where you can balance everything out. And that's what we're just doing here. We're starting and stopping the lathe, working piece by piece off, and just trying not to get hit with all the shrapnel that was coming off this piece of wood. And it's about 100 degrees in my workshop, so had the door open, trying to ventilate the best I could, but it went pretty well. The great thing about working with this wood is it's all just, I don't even know what kind of wood this is. I think it's oak or mesquite. I think it's mesquite, but anyway, not a whole lot of problems as far as shaping it. I was getting a little bit of chatter back on the chisel where some of the knots were on this wood. My biggest concern was that I just didn't set it up right using the faceplate. So what I'm trying to do here is just work everything down nice and evenly, and the bottom I was really freaked out about because I didn't think I was going to have enough material to make the mortise. And the other issue was the amount of cracking that had already occurred. So this is like an old piece of wood that I've literally had hanging in my backyard for like the past year and a half now. And if you go back and watch my other videos, I usually just take it down and put it in epoxy and make pretty good bowls with it. But you can see all the knots or all the bugs. You can see this giant crack in the bottom. And what I'm really hoping doesn't happen is it ends up shattering on the lathe. And I really thought that was going to happen as I started working down this material. I made the mortise and realized I went a little too deep, so I had to come back with the flat carbide tool, take off even more material because the mortise was just too big for what I wanted it for. But once I got to a nice size, took out the deck screws, and I was really glad I used the deck screws. They worked as really good attachment points, and I'm surprised they didn't fly off the lathe personally. But got that down to a nice shape, and I'm pretty happy with where we're at so far. So now we're just going ahead and cleaning up the top portion of it and trying to get it into a basic bowl kind of shape. And surprisingly, this part went relatively well, but there's a lot of dead wood. There's a lot of wood missing, and I just didn't want to, you know, I wanted something to show for it, but I didn't want to create an ashtray, essentially. So here I am deciding how far we're going to go as far as depth, but got it nice and flat, was able to take the tailstock off of it, and the mortise luckily held up really well during this portion of it. And the wood was nice and soft. Like I said, the wood is dead, so the chisels ate through it really easy. It's just basically dust coming out of it. You can see there just a lot of good material being worked down, and I didn't have to tighten up the chuck jaws all that much. So now we're just deciding how big the lip of the bowl is going to be, and now I'm just seeing where would it be a good depth to stop. But here I am just switching between the smaller and larger round carbide tools, coming back hitting it with a square, and was pretty happy with this. And then I eventually got to a depth where now I sort of had a debate, like how far did you want to go down with it, and how much of the lip of the bowl did you want to save? Because the problem with, you know, the bowl itself is the material is kind of uneven, it's kind of wonky, and my big fear was punching through the mortise because we had already eaten through so much material. But here we are just working the edges a little bit, and I ended up catching it when it flew off the lathe like that. So luckily it didn't fall and hit the floor. That was like an act of God, because I was coming back and forth, couldn't decide how deep I wanted to go. But that was a message from the universe that I just needed to stop the lathe, clean it up, clean up the shop, and just be happy with where we were, because you could see the cracks just getting bigger. Every time I would tighten down the mortise, it would just get a little bit larger. So at this point, pretty happy with where we are. We ended up sanding it very briefly. We went from like 120 up to 180 grit. Like I said, it did not take very long to do the sanding portion of this at all. I didn't want to spend a lot of time with it, and the material was kind of just already deteriorating on the lathe. So I was like, hey, be happy with where you're at. I was. So once we got it sanded down, that literally took less than 10 minutes. Now we're just hitting it with the wood wax, polishing it up all nice and neat, getting that grain and the wood to come out and pop. Really love how this looks overall. But I am definitely going to do this project again in the future. Learned a lot. Usually I am not a good woodworker and screw these things up a lot of the time. So I was very happy that I was able to do this for the first time and be successful at doing it. So I guess I learned from all my previous mistakes, but I really loved how this bowl turned out. The grain looks absolutely beautiful. Love how that pops. Love I love all the imperfections in it. It just really gives it a lot of character, and I can't wait to do this again. But here it is a little bit closer. You can see all that material that we worked down, all the knots, all the holes. Really, really good looking project. So hope you guys liked it. Bonus video for the week. And what I ended up doing was coming back and just hitting it with a small thing of lacquer. Not a whole lot of issue there. But we're going to have a victory beer, and then we're going to close the video out. So hope you like it. See you in the next one. Peace. Much success. So project is done. We've had our victory beer today, and not bad. My first piece of scrap wood that I've ever like turned as just the wood. Usually I add epoxy and everything, but this one actually turned out pretty good. You saw it pop off the lathe at the end, and I caught it, and that was God's way, or the universe's way of telling me, stop, you dumbass, because you're about to explode this thing all over your lathe. But really like how this turned out. Love all the different edges, the wood grain colors. We put some lacquer on it, so hopefully it stays good for a long, long time. But really, really happy how this turned out. Bottom turned out. I'm surprised the mortise worked on it, but obviously you saw the before and after, so really happy how this turned out. This was actually a bonus project. Today is August 23rd. You guys are literally watching this. It is now 10 p.m. in the state of Texas. You guys are going to be watching this in 8 hours. I'm going to go in, edit the video, but really love how this turned out. Good little bonus project for the channel. So hope you guys liked it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Not a whole lot of problems. Really enjoyed this one, but probably going to do more just wood projects in the future. This one turned out really, really good. So yeah, so don't forget to subscribe, like, all that good stuff. I'm going to get indoors because it's hot as hell out here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, peace.